Welcome to BNR, new seasons, new goals, new shows. We promised you new content, and that's exactly what we are giving you. Me with my partner Wiki, we've kept it simple. Asim and Wiki, and a closer look at Ipswich. How are we doing? How's the summer been?
It's not been too bad, but for Liverpool fans, I don't think I can speak for everyone, but I think we're all a bit concerned at the moment.
Yeah, it was a real feel good factor, wasn't it? And now with around about 12 or 11 days to go to the until the transfer window shuts, you're right, there is a bit of concern. But the Reds won at the weekend, which is the main thing.
Yeah.
3 points and 3 points only is what we needed and we got. But I just want to take you back just a bit because I hadn't had a chance to speak to you regarding Slot's style and the way he's going to implement things. From what you've seen, I know it's really early days. What are the differences between Slot ball and Klopp ball, if I may say so?
Well, as you can see on the tactics board, the main difference is they actually set positional structures now, which we saw a bit of last season with Klopp.
You loved that Man City game, didn't you?
I love that. I think that was perfection, to be honest, obviously without the 3 points. And similarly, the last tactics show we did, at the start of last season, Chelsea, we used a similar shape in this as that game. But obviously now it's more about central progression rather than being direct, even though we did see us looking better when we were direct. So it is a work in progress, but there's definitely some good signs.
Good signs indeed. But it was a game of two halves, wasn't it? In the first half, you have to give Ipswich a lot of credit. It would have been really, really easy for them to come. And even though they were at home in front of their crowd, first match of the season, to just come and give big Liverpool are coming to the ground and give them the ball, sit, shut up shop and try to catch us on the counter-attack. But they were really, really aggressive and they went man-to-man.
Yeah.
Not many teams, especially the lesser teams, go man-to-man. But if you go man-to-man, you have to be really aggressive. You have to have a lot of conviction. You have to be really, really brave and win your individual battles. And Ipswich, to be fair to them, they did that first half.
Yeah, they did. And as we saw down our right-hand side, Konza got targeted, as obviously we press with Trent higher, maybe to go to the left winger or even man-to-man at times we've seen this season. But Konza was getting isolated here. And I think the main problem with him is he is a bit similar to Virgil van Dijk, whereas he watches and then he engages if he has to as a last resort. And when you have big physical players, they cause you problems. And that's why a Slot, as we were going to touch on, brought Kanate on, who was really out there and aggressive as a first option, so we could stop that and then control them and pin them back.
Would you say that it would allowed us to sort of squeeze up 5 yards further up the field as well?
And he did, and he saw it in the first 5 minutes straight away. That's just, I think Ibu, as we've always said, he's probably the most aggressive defender in the Premier League, and he's probably the best at it as well. Because there's no point being aggressive if you can't match it. If we saw games with Vinicius, Martinelli last season where he was over here following Martinelli on the halfway line, if it goes wrong, you're in trouble. But you know that's just the nature of his game, and it actually suits Van Dijk very, very well because they complement each other.
Yeah, 100%. If he sits off and engages after the first action, it's Ibu's really tight and aggressive. But let's take you back to the build-up. I want to talk to you about the build-up. By the way, I just want to tell you that the production, until we start getting a lot more subs and likes, it'll be a lot better. But we promise you, baby steps. The production is going to be a lot better as we grow. So you have to bear with us if there's a few technical issues. The mic and sound is not great. But Wiki, let me take you to the build-up. There's generally a 4-2 build-up with the centre-backs, close together. And this is the first phase. But the full-backs are quite narrow as well. Optimal distances. Talk to me about the 4-2 build-up of Arne Slot.
A lot of coaches are using this now, and I actually likened it to, or a lot of people have likened it to, the De Zerbi build up where Jota comes here and Szoboszlai, they drop, so you end up without a 9, and you use 6 players in the first phase of build up. To be honest, if I'm honest, I'm not the biggest fan of this, because I think it's too intricate at times. And if you look at the spaces, and let's say a team presses with a 4-2-4,
and that's what Ipswich did,
and they went man to man, and the spaces are closed, and it's too intricate. The double pivot you can't really get access to. I prefer a 3-2. Even, but I'm talking mainly about the second phase. 4-2, okay, fine. The benefits are that you have all your players in your natural position. So if you do lose it, the right back's here, the left back's there, your double 6 is there, so you can recover, or you're in a good position to recover. But as I said, I prefer the 3-2, where Trent goes inside and Robertson covers and creates a 3, and one of the 8s or 6s, McAllister, turns into a 10. Szoboszlai comes here, Gravenberch goes across, and there you create your 3-2-2-3 build up. And we actually saw this a lot last season. So there are changes, but we did see some sort of positional rotations, and I thought we looked the best. I know I'm keep going on about last season, but we have to compare and contrast styles here.
You mentioned that if Trent inverts, Robertson is here. He's a guy who's talked about a lot in this setup. I've been very vocal about Liverpool needing a left back / left sided centre back who's comfortable in the wide areas, is a dueler, who gets low in duels and in 1v1 situations. In terms of build up, what characteristics does Robertson lack to be a real integral part of this Arne Slot build up?
I think the first thing is body manipulation and angle bias. What I mean by that is Robertson, when he receives the ball either wider in the natural fullback position or in the 3 when he's created, like we saw, he tried to play this pass to the number 6 and he got caught out because he doesn't have the natural body hip manipulation to play that pass. It's forced, and he's either can go down the line or backwards, and that's where I think we need an upgrade on that position.
And do you think, is that why McAllister was spending a bit too much time here? Because that angle is a lot easier, is a lot more natural for Robbo. And the thing is, if sometimes you see Bernardo Silva do that to drag the pivot out, Kevin De Bruyne to do that, and even did it. I think they were playing a slight diamond,
a stretch diamond
at the weekend, and you have your natural tendency to receive the ball there, to drag and disrupt the opposition's setup. But if you've got, like you said, Robertson, he doesn't have the passing ability, the progressive passing. Robertson, for me, has to be ahead of the play. And what you just said about the 3-2 build-up, is there any way we can get him more involved where he is ahead of the ball, but we've still got that control? Does that left-sided pivot need to come into those left-sided centre-back, but to split in the centre-back and the left-back, where we've seen the likes of Tony Cruz, Thiago receive the ball, and Robertson is receiving the ball where he's comfortable in. And talk to me about it. How they work.
I actually mentioned this before the game because I was even though it was Ipswich, with all due respect, I was worried about Robertson, and I mentioned it before the game on our group chat. You mentioned the Cruz position. This is it, the LCM or the Thiago position. For example, this is McAllister. This is what I think would be an optimal solution with Robertson. My real solution would be actually to buy a left back, but this is what I would do. If you push Robertson higher, and this is probably in the second phase, so we're a bit higher up here. And Diaz would come inside. He's your Gravenberch. He's your Trent. So this is what I would do. Create the exact same 3-2-5. But you have your ball players. You have Maka there who can manipulate that pass to Robertson, who can play through the lines to Diaz, who can pick out the second pivot. And as we've seen with Maka and Gravenberch, they're both comfortable in these areas now. So we could even see this switching. And also Robertson as a width fixer.
Don't mention that word.
I think we'll get Asim got a lot of stick for creating these false terms on Twitter. So I thought it was kind of self-explanatory.
A footballer who holds width.
I think we should stick to width holder.
Okay, that's fine.
So Robertson in this area, where you can provide crosses, and at least you've negated him from the build-up. The only problem with this is
if you lose the ball,
and also 1v1 threat, where we could be a bit more fluid and have Diaz come in late. So once the ball goes there, he can come in. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So if you can go deeper, we can both be at sort of half.
And is that also taking away Diaz's best strength from being a wide winger? How many times have we just seen him, if that the left back is here, back into a 4-2, and if you've got even a 3-2 inverting, you've seen, the likes of Gomez in a 3-2, Trent inverting. There's your box midfield. You sort that out. And then Diaz is holding width.
Yeah.
If he's receiving from the left back, and then he can carry the ball. You keep mentioning that City game. That was one of his best games in terms of ball carrying. Yes, output is a problem.
Yeah.
But when Diaz is in inside position, he recycles the ball and he comes from these sort of positions. And how many times have we seen him just travel here?
Yeah.
But with no output. No output. For me, if you're going to have that, you're going to have real control in the game, Wiki, where we've seen where Robertson is joining the attack as the 5th and the 6th attacker. How many times do we see him in a 2-2-6 on the overlap crossing? That is his game. But for me, Diaz is not an inside forward. I think there was a game where maybe it was a Luton game where he was making that Mane run from out to in, where he's cutting across. How many times do we see Mane take advantage of Kyle Walker, from the over the shoulder, making that run and come into central positions, receive that ball from Salah? But I think Diaz, and I know I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here. I don't like Diaz.
I'm used to it.
My point is that I don't like Diaz receiving the ball on the inside because I think that takes his main strength away.
He's better at carrying from them positions. And you also mentioned, just going back to the Robertson, having him as a width holder. When we do create the 3, regardless, Diaz comes deep, and I think that's his best strength, from carrying from them positions into the box. So having Robertson high does negate that a bit as well. And obviously Diaz is a better 1v1 than Robertson as well. So yeah, there are issues with that as well, but I think something has to be done, because this, with all due respect, was Ipswich, and there's bigger tests to come.
Yeah, 100%. It's all about keeping the distances very close, optimal distances, control, and playing the ball on your terms. I think Slot mentioned that aside from the goals, which are absolutely brilliant, and Liverpool showed what they can do if they have to bypass the press. And he said, look, not all the time. You're not going to break the lines all the time, especially when you've got someone like Trent in the right back position. I checked his pass length. I think it was around about 23 meters on average, compared to someone like Szoboszlai, which is very encouraging for me. Another vertical player. And I think he racked up a 14.7 average meters in terms of pass length. So that tells me, I've been talking about it all summer. How do you take Trent out of Trent? How do you take Szoboszlai out of Szoboszlai? How do you take Salah out of Salah? Well, these guys are football technicians. They're great footballers. They're great minds, and they can adapt. And if someone like Szoboszlai is playing in the right half space, and he has to come into the pivot to be a bit more conservative in play, to make sure we keep recycling the ball and keep it circulating in order to accelerate the play on our terms, then I'm all up for it. But I want to take you back to Trent. You mentioned him. Let's go back to the 4-2 build-up. If you just sort that out. In the second half, Wiki, we saw Konate playing, 5 yards further up, because as a team we could squeeze up a bit. But how did that affect Trent? Because I think he played in a slightly weird position that we don't always see. It's a half space between the right back and inverting as well. And then as the attack developed, he went into spaces where we've seen him flourishing.
It's not occupying zones, but rather he's bursting into them zones. And I
Space invader.
Yeah,
there's
another one. He was invading space. He's rather than occupying zones, which is more of a positional play thing.
And does that suit him?
I think it does. I think
it suits Bradley.
Yeah, it definitely suits Bradley, but I think it suits Trent as well, because as we've seen, he can drive with the ball.
He can.
And he's got a sort of free role now where he can go inside, or he can even be playing the KDB position in between the winger, or he can rotate. So I think there is a I forgot what I was going to say now, but I think
Flexibility.
there is a flexibility there with him, and I think that suits him, because if he's consistently in the double pivot, I think we lose his creativeness. But yes, he can ping a 50-yard ball, but you want him in and around zone 14, which I think we'll see a lot more this season. Zone 14 is a number 10 area typically.
And I think that's the mistake Gareth Southgate made in the summer. He wanted him to be that disciplined screener of defence. That's not him. And he had Adam Wharton there. I thought he should have played alongside Rice. And as we've actually mentioned, I probably haven't seen my tweets. Probably haven't seen my tweets, but Asim spoke about Trent being an 8, and that's what we spoke about. The freedom. He can go into the pivot, or he can go into the half spaces. He can go around, and yes, he's a great player, but that's where you want him. He can control a game. We've seen that before. But I think the free role suits him, and we probably will see a lot more assists. And we saw that cross from to Jota, and he just narrowly put it wide just before the goal. Let's stick with that triangle. If Salah is holding a width, you've got Szoboszlai in that space, and then we've seen Trent making the underlap, the overlap. If Salah is here, Trent is here, or he's interchanging.
Szoboszlai is
holding width. So that triangle, I think you will see a Liverpool type of goal between here. And whether Salah is playing that, if Salah's here and Szoboszlai is completing the box, you've got Trent running here. And I think this triangle, and you've seen that cutback, it's been a theme in pre-season. If Liverpool it's all about repetition. And I think you will see more of Liverpool's routine goals in this sort of fashion. Obviously, there'll be a range of Liverpool type of goals, but I think there's been a real effort from Slot is to create this type of triangle, to create this goal.
And the more we control games, the more we can get into these positions. And just going back to that triangle, we have seen that triangle from here before as well, where Szoboszlai is here, and Salah comes deep to pick this ball up. And there's a 1-2. And Szoboszlai has come round and he's gone in, and there's a 1-2, and he's made the third man run, which is another big thing with Slot. So there's lots of stuff to come from that right side of the triangle, and there's talk of Szoboszlai not providing great output. But we have to remember what kind of roles he has in the team. Now he's pressing from the front, but he's also covering central progression areas, and he's also screening Salah as well, because that's another issue with Salah. In the initial phase, he'll have to go back because he's this side, but then I've seen us even in a sort of 4-5-1, a mix of a 4-5-1, 4-4-2 when we're deep. So Szoboszlai has got an important role to play this season.
Okay, 100%. I think what you just mentioned, I think Liverpool, that's another theme where Liverpool are playing the up and the back and the through, cycle in whether it's in transition, whether bypassing the press, or in general play as well. I think Liverpool are going to take advantage of third man runs. I just hope it's not always Paul Szoboszlai making that run, because we've seen him being boost, and he's got a real role this season, Wiki, where you had it yesterday. He's a balancing act between two vertical players, arguably the most influential players in our team, in Salah and Trent. But he has legs, and I think his effort and his role, it doesn't get the recognition that it deserves. But I think Slaughter needs to recognise that we have to manage his minutes. And Harvey Elliott plays that role very, very differently. And we will see teams really park the bus against us, especially at Anfield. And I think Harvey Elliott will really suit those types of games where you need to move it quickly and sort of find those little pockets of space to accelerate play. You mentioned the King. We have to touch on the King. I thought it was an absolute masterclass in wing play, because over the years he's lost a yard or two of pace. he's still fairly nippy. He's still really, really sharp. He looks after himself really, really well. We all know that. That's Mohamed Salah's professionalism and desire to, stay in shape. But I thought, yes, on Saturday afternoon, Wiki, that he was unbelievable. Just talk to me, about his performance and what you thought really stood out.
It was just as you said, it was a masterclass, a lesson in how to play the wide winger role in the modern game. And as just going back 3-4 years, when he first came to Liverpool, he was sort of in this kind of area, in the half space, with Trent outside, and that was his consistent position. Firmino dropping into the 10 role, and Mane on the other side in the half space as well. And then a couple of years ago, we saw him go into a wider role with Trent in the half space in the 2-3-5 21-22 season.
Because people show me it. Because
people
2-3-5.
Because people actually forget that Trent inverted a lot earlier than the season that Nunes came. So
in the 2-3-5, he was probably coming into midfield in the second phase rather than in the 3-2.
100%. And this is what we would look like. And that's Robertson.
So that's from now.
So let's just say Diaz and Mane. That's Henson. Yeah, it was a bit more fluid, and he didn't maintain position. Again, we saw that right side.
We had the situational double there as well. A lot of people talking about playing with the two. It's a two at times, especially in a 4-2 build-up. But it's very situational. And we saw that weekend.
And it still refers to the 4-3-3.
There you go. And if you see average from the afternoon, it's more in terms of average positions. And that was Gravenberch receiving from the 3. But if we just stick to the midfield, there was Szoboszlai, there was McAllister, and there was Gravenberch.
We did see that. And that was a typical 4-3-3 at times. I know we didn't mention it before, but it was either 4-1-5 or 4-3-3. So like people keep talking about we're playing a double pivot now, we're playing with a double pivot. Off the ball is where it really makes a difference if you got like a Rodri or a Rice. And people talk about Gravenberch is playing a double pivot. I don't think it makes a difference. On the ball, it's a situational double pivot anyway. That was with Henderson, Fabinho, Wijnaldum. It was different. So I don't get this point. Sorry, I tried to go from a tangent there.
No, it's all right. You mentioned Gravenberch. Let's stick with Gravenberch before we finish. Can he play that role? And where does he need to improve? I know what your answer is going to be. You're going to tell me it's the defensive nous.
Yeah.
Or is there anything in particular that you want him? Because my concern is, Wiki, is when we are faced with not with Ipswich, not with the likes of even teams like West Ham, but when we face like the teams like Arsenal, when we face teams like Man City, where you have to roll your sleeves up, where we will lose the ball and there's ground to cover, and there's tackles to be made. It's how Gravenberch is going to cover space. I know Arne Slot wants to lose the ball on his terms as well, but great teams provide you so many problems that sometimes you have to, go out of your comfort zone. Can Gravenberch, on a long-term basis, go out his comfort zone and develop that side of the game?
Yeah, and I mentioned it after the game that he's good on the ball. We already know he's good at football, but I was talking about him kicking shins and getting stuck in. That's the part that we really need to look at. And I did see him. He did want to win the ball. He's got them long legs, as we've talked about, which always helps as a number 6. Even if you can't get that extra 5 yards, you've got the legs. He's young.
Hello, people. If you're thinking why the hell is he doing another intro, it's because I told you, I promised you, we are going to have teething problems and our cameras stopped working. It's a bit hot in here, and I think for safety reasons, it just went off. So I think we touched on, Wiki, on the masterclass of the King, and we ended with Gravenberch. So the King first. I thought it was an absolute masterclass in wing play. When to hold, when to drop into the half spaces, when to come and spin off. It was a joy to watch. And for a player that has lost a yard or two in pace, he's made it up with supreme intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned masterclass, and it was exactly that. And this is just some intelligence that you don't see very often. And for some guy that was a dynamic winger, he doesn't really rely on pace anymore, and that says a lot. And this, like we said before, this right-sided triangle we spoke about before, it kept happening where Szoboszlai would come 1-2 between Salah, and he'd make the third man run, and he'd go. And this is going to be the template, I think, for our season. And talk about that pass and that inside run. He actually came and dropped for the 1-2. Salah did, and then ran off. So this is not just running around like a headless chicken. It's actually knowing when to go, when to stay, and when to hold your position, because you have to remember this is a bit more of a positional system. A lot of the time he has to hold width if someone else is not doing it. But this just shows how classy he is.
Do you like that? If he's the width fixer in a lot of the times, if Trent is inverting and it's a 3-2 build up, he's picking the ball here either directly from Canate or from Trent, who's in midfield. Do you like that? Does it nullify his strengths, especially when he's inside in these sort of positions, and you've got, let's say, Szoboszlai holding width, Trent is coming in from the half space, and Salah is between the posts, and he can roll defenders? How many times have we seen that? And he can pop off a shot. Do you everybody wants him there because he's more of a goal threat, but you do miss his mastery if he's not here. Because I think there was an instance, Wiki, where he came so involved in one of the build-ups, and he popped it off to the left back or maybe Van Dijk, and then he sprinted 100 yards and nearly got the tap in. He's a controller in the build-up. He can put his studs on the ball, control proceedings, slow the tempo, and then get involved. And he is, in most cases, the one to provide that pass. And you mentioned if he's in the wide areas, he's lost a half a yard of space because of his footballing IQ, Wiki. He still can create that separation.
He can create it without beating a player. He can create the separation for the pass or the cross. And you saw that ball from this kind of position, outside of the boot, to Diaz. Like you mentioned, would it nullify him? No, I don't think it will. And we saw in 21-22 season him really as this width fixer, where we swapped and Trent came inside and Henderson went a bit further ahead, sort of a KDB 8/10 role from the flat midfield, and became an asymmetrical midfield. So I don't think it impacts him. Maybe long term you'd want him closer to the box, but I think he's still got enough legs to be a touchline winger.
You mentioned when he was a dynamic winger, was that more of a 2-3-5?
Yeah, 100%. But
show me the 2-3-5.
Saying that he was a dynamic winger, but he was more of an inside forward.
Yeah.
Where we had this is the 2-3-5 in 21-22, so it's slightly different to the one previous to that where we had a flat three.
Yeah.
Henderson right now. Or you want me to show the where he was inside forward?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the one before that where we had. It's gonna be a bit complicated, but it's Robertson, Mane, Firmino, Salah, Trent. This was a 2-3-5.
And we have a more of a flat three.
Yeah, this is Wijnaldum, Fabinho, Henderson.
Okay.
And these are the kind of spaces both wingers occupied, and Firmino dropped to create these into out runs, out to in runs from the forwards.
And if this was Henderson, you saw him many times make this run. Half the time he didn't get the ball. But if the dynamic, I think this dynamic was better when Salah was here and then Harvey Elliott came. I think that was those 3-4 games before he got injured against Leeds, where we had a proper player who can play back to goal. The thing is, Henderson playing here and making that run here, if he was, especially against a bus, if he's playing back to goal, in most cases, he ended up here and Salah came inside and then you had Trent coming from here and we had that triangle, and then Henderson was holding the width, cross. I think that even that goal against in the league, in the season that we won the league, he popped a back to goal, back to boss cross to Sadio Mane against Chelsea. Was it Man City?
There was a couple. There was a City and
I think there was a Chelsea game as well. The game that Salah cracked a rocket. I think that was the game as well. We saw him in many.
You're right.
We saw him in many positions because that was his strength. He has a decent cross on him, and he had a decent whip on him. So I think that triangle worked better with Harvey Elliott.
Yep.
And
that was the switch, wasn't it, from 2021 to 21-22, where, like I said, we saw Henderson going from more of a sitter in the three to an advanced midfielder, and Salah went out wide because you mentioned his dynamic winger type. We actually saw him switch, and some people didn't like that because they thought, it would impact his goal scoring threat, but it didn't. But it only showcased his ability to create.
Ability to create. We don't have the ability to record at the moment, Wiki, because I've been told by our producer that one of the camera, the bird's eye view on the board.
Yeah, you confused me. I was looking up and I think I lost my track of thought. So before it was the face one that went, and now it's the tactics board.
So look, we promised you we're gonna have problems, but I promise
you. 12 nearly, I think.
Our production, we sat here at 7 o'clock in the evening, and it's, what is it now? It's 10 to 12 midnight. So I promise you that the production will get better. But I just want to touch on Ryan Gravenberch. He's more of a number 6 for Arne Slot system than Jurgen Klopp's system, Wiki. There's no point putting our fingers on the board now, but just tell me exactly what you thought about Ryan Gravenberch. And my concern is, can he develop that defensive nous? Can he track those runners off him? Not against teams like Ipswich, not against teams like West Ham. Can he do it against Man City? Can he do it against Arsenal, where you have to play out your comfort zone? But that's what's Arne Slot's, that's his job, is to develop him. But do you think he can do it?
Look, it's a bit too early to say, but we liked what we saw against Ipswich. It was the first game, and look, we don't have a problem with his footballing ability. Everyone knows it's there, but like I mentioned on Twitter, that he kicked a few shins and he got involved. That's what I was most impressed about. Everyone knows he can turn on the half turn and play a ball because he's a brilliant footballer, but you have to provide a bit of context here, because if you look at Manchester City and Arsenal, the defensive structure that them guys have, that's what you're comparing it to. So when I say there's question marks on Gravenberch, you're comparing it to the best.
Yeah.
And you look at Rodri, Rice, even though they're slightly different, they do get compared, but I think they're slightly different. But you have to look at the structure around them, where they have 4 centre-backs, a proper double pivot in a big game. Like Marino's linked now, Rice and Kovacic. So you have to look at that as well. So it's because it's unfair then to compare Gravenberch with these other guys. But like you said, Arne Slot wants a ball player. We'll see how well it goes, and it also depends on the structure around the team and how we control the ball. But it's early days, but we liked what we saw against Ipswich.
I mentioned on Twitter that I had the privilege to sit behind Arne Slot. I think it was around about row 3 or row 4, and the amount of times, I think half of his instructions were directed towards Ryan Gravenberch. Drop, hold, show for the ball. And honestly, the amount of times he was screaming instructions to him, but I think he sees real sort of the catalyst of attributes in him that he can really develop into. You mentioned it, he's got the mobile hips, he's got the ability to evade the press, he's got the mobility, and he's got the long legs. Long legs always help, especially off the ball as well. And like you say, he won a few duels, but if we want him to become the conductor, I think he needs to increase in terms of volume passing. The conductor needs to... he can only conduct if he's getting he's receiving the ball, but it's also up to him as well.
He has to regulate.
Exactly. And this is the reason why I think Arne Slot was shouting instructions at him against Sevilla, saying show for the ball, because if the two strikers are cover shadowing the passing lanes into our pivot, then it's up to you to provide that fluidity and rotations to get that. And this is probably the reason why I prefer a staggered, and a lot of coaches prefer a staggered pivot as well, because it's all about creating those angles on and off the ball. But yeah, 100%. I think it's going to be a season of molding. It's going to be a season of fine tuning. Hopefully, it's not a season of teething problems, the ones that we had tonight. But if you're watching the show, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and smash a like on the video, and send us your questions in, because we want to engage with you. We want to answer your questions. And we want to make this.
If we get Gene on the sofa, we can go live one day. But it's been 2 years and I've still not seen him sat on the sofa. So Gene, get here.
100%. We need a ranter on the sofa.
We do. But look, a bit too calm.
But this is the calm show. It's a bit different. We'll be providing plenty of stats as well. I'll be bringing the numbers to the show as well. But this
also
is just
some footage as well of the games we're going to try, so you guys can see what we're talking about and not just a few yellow pins.
Exactly. So don't take our word for it. Take Liverpool's word for it. We see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.